Answer engines and results are transforming the search landscape. Traditional SEO strategies alone are no longer enough. As users increasingly expect direct, immediate answers rather than long-form blue links, SEO pros need to stay ahead. While classic search engines like Google still dominate, the rise of LLM-based search and ChatGPT is changing user behavior. This shift is accelerating the growth of answer engine optimization as a critical new layer in the search ecosystem. As a result, SEO teams need to change how they work and develop new paths for success. Legacy keyword tactics aren't enough. Content must be structured to meet intent and deliver concise, authoritative answers. So what does it take to build a mature strategy that evolves and ensures visibility in this new paradigm? This is the Voices of Search podcast. I'm Jordan Cooney, and joining me today is Guy Yalif, Chief Evangelist at Webflow, which empowers marketers to build and personalize enterprise-grade websites without relying on heavy engineering. Today, Guy will break down what AEO maturity really means and how you can get there. Guy, welcome to the Voices of Search podcast.
Thanks for having me, Jordan. Excited to talk about this.
So thrilled to have someone with a tremendous amount of web experience. Obviously, you've started a company that was acquired by Webflow, but really, your background is one that I think is uniquely positioned to talk about the AEO experience, not just from the SEO lens, but from a much broader perspective of how the web is built, right? And how we build great experiences. So, Guy, maybe tell us a little bit about your background, how you got to Webflow, and then we can dive into maybe some of our early questions here.
Happy to share a brief bit of context. I was an aerospace engineer who did the straight line, popular, well-trodden path to CMO, because those two are always so connected, and then have spent 20 plus years helping marketers use AI to personalize prospect experiences, some in ads, some on websites directly. And then, to your point, had the privilege 9.5 years ago of being co-founder and CEO of an AI website personalization company called Intellimise, long before Gen AI, using some of the AI that's been around for a while. In this case, it was predictive AI, and using that to tailor experiences. And Webflow acquired Intellimise a year and change ago so that you can now build these visually stunning brand building websites and drive revenue from them.
Awesome. And when you think about your journey to Webflow, what are some of the highlights of this experience, right? I think it's really uncommon for founders to stay for a long time after they get acquired. But what made this acquisition really rewarding for you guys, but also exciting in terms of the work that you get to do today?
When Webflow reached out, we came to understand as we got to know each other over time that a couple of things. One, Webflow does what it says it's going to do and is clear when it makes mistakes or can't do something. In Intellimise, we ran it the same way. And I, as a former CEO, is used to everybody lying to him all the time. I appreciate that. Right. There was actually a cultural fit, which is so rare in M&A. And the ability to drive revenue through ABM, personalization testing, was literally the number one ask from prospects, which is why Webflow went out to go find a partner to acquire in. And that value prop of go build your brand, go drive revenue, coding optional. You can code heavily if you want. You can code not at all if you want, and everything in between. That's really powerful. And it's been exciting to have the goods to bring to market.
Cool. That's awesome. And congratulations on being able to find that cultural fit. I agree with you. I think that's just really rare in any industry to be able to find that connection point. Let's talk a little bit about what's happening in the market and in the shifts that we're seeing. And I want to start with our first kind of deep dive question that really I think is capturing a lot of the conversation that's happening in the search and in the organic space. And it's this concept of AEO versus SEO, and really this whole name or nomenclature around what it is that we're doing to optimize for answer engine results. So, what sets answer engine optimization apart from traditional SEO? Why does this even matter today? I think this is a very controversial question. I think a lot of people in LinkedIn and on YouTube and in all these different channels, they're all like trying to label this thing. And there's this real, this real theory of like, well, isn't just SEO the same thing as AEO? We're just, trying to give it a new name because it looks slightly different. But would love to get your perspective on that, Guy, and what your thoughts are in between this naming convention and what these two things are.
It's a great question. And I think it's one that will matter and does matter to a lot of us for a long time to come. At its core, SEO was showing up in a variety of search engines and then eventually just, Google, maybe Google and Bing, having your content directly pointed to using your words with blue links. We all know that. With AEO, the goal is to appear in LLMs as people are asking them questions. ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, Anthropic's Claude, Perplexity, and more. And as you mentioned earlier, usage is skyrocketing. I mean, ChatGPT reached 100 million users in 2 months. Like no other product's ever done that before. And it's now at 800 million users. Perhaps more importantly for many of us, Forrester surveyed a bunch of B2B buyers and 95% of them said, yep, I'm going to use Gen AI in my buying process this year. Okay, so it's something to pay attention to. What does it mean for us? In my humble opinion, it's both risk and opportunity. The risk is our brand narrative. We kind of lose control of some of that. It was intentional to call out that SEO uses our words. LLMs, as we all know, reframes the answers not through our carefully crafted copy. And so it's totally reasonable for an LLM to be 100% correct, but present us as a list of capabilities rather than this like carefully differentiated story we spent so much time working on. Or for it to be confident and wrong. Right. So that's one, brand narrative control. Two, traffic, which helps us all deliver the pipeline and revenue we're accountable for. While I know there have been a bunch of headlines on catastrophic drops, I think more broadly, the drops are there, but not catastrophic. Bain estimated that overall SEO is down 15 to 25%. That jives with data I've heard from others as potential risk. But the upside is that when people engage with an LLM, they tend to be further down the funnel. They tend to be more qualified. Right. And so firms that we know very well found that quantitatively. SEMrush said they are 4.4x more valuable. Ahrefs found they convert 23x better than typical SEO traffic. And I think the last piece of what is kind of a perfect storm for all of us, we're all drawing content from the same LLMs. We sound even more indistinguishable than we have forever, right? We're all the best, all the first, all the leader. And when LinkedIn ran a bunch of our B2B ads in front of prospects, only 19% were able to correctly attribute the ad to the company doing the advertising. That didn't make me super happy to hear.
Right. Go spend more money now.
Totally. Yes, exactly. So to your point on, hey, isn't SEO the same as AEO? I've heard that. I've heard SEO is dead. I heard anecdotally through someone else that a Fortune 500 CMO fired his or her entire SEO team and said, we're doing AEO now. I could not disagree more. I think AEO is close to what good SEO always should have been.
Right.
Original content that is genuinely valuable throughout the buyer journey, especially data, that gets rewarded. Okay, minus one thing plus a couple. The minus is keyword ranking as a concept doesn't exist. You're more focused on like mentions and share of voice and things like that. Fine. And the pluses aren't replacing, but one, rather than optimizing for counting keywords in a basket of keywords, you're now optimizing to comprehensively answer a basket of questions at various levels throughout the funnel. So from keywords to answers. Two, the structure, the metadata on your site, helping an LLM understand content, meaning, structure is more important. It's actually hard to overstate how important it is. And three, links still matter. That doesn't go away, but plain text dimensions on other sites, they count more than they did when than they did in SEO. And
Right.
at Webflow, we're seeing a big impact from this. 8% of our total self-serve signups come from AI search, and they convert 6 times better than SEO traffic.
So there's a lot to unpack here, because
sorry,
but I want to
long
start
answer.
I want to start by asking one really specific question around this topic of AEO versus SEO. Foundationally, there's probably a lot that you feel is similar in terms of the conceptual work that's being done by this organic channel or channels, right? Technical work, building good websites, building good experiences. But when it comes to the disruption in the funnel, you brought that up, that, hey, this traffic is converting a lot better. I get really puzzled by that. And I want to get your perspective on, is the transition of how consumers are going through the LLM funnel versus the SEO funnel going to foundationally change SEO versus AEO or AI discovery? Because ultimately, SEO is going to become your awareness channel, and AEO or AI discovery is going to become your conversion funnel.
Opinion of one, very much looking out in the future, because I don't think anybody knows, right? I think the real answer is I don't think anybody knows. I think it's the early days of a new medium, just like for those of us like you and I who were around in the early days of search. It was not super clear where it would go. John Battelle, I think it was 22 years ago in '03, was like, Google is the database of intent. And we all were like, wow, yes, there was great intent here. And we saw, ginormous businesses built on that.
Sure.
I also hear things like, hey, you know what? The LLMs, they're more likely to go to third-party sources for upper funnel content, like top 10 lists and G2, and your website for mid and lower funnel content to get the details. And while that may be true, in my humble opinion, both are going to be for both. I do not think that SEO will be tofu only and that LLMs will be, mid or lower funnel. I don't believe that at all. I think if we really get speculative, again, opinion of one, not based in data, I think over time they will come together because they each serve a purpose. Just like, I'll draw a parallel and cut me off. This is not where you want to go. I think websites will be important forever, but they will now, they have two audiences to speak to. They're going to speak to humans. People are going to want to hear your story your way forever. That will continue to matter. And so you need visually stunning, emotionally evocative, engaging experiences. That matters. And they need to speak to machines. Now, we've quietly been doing that for a while by doing SEO, right? And speaking to Google.
Yeah.
Okay, now there's a bit more to do where, the data we provide them will be used more broadly. So I don't think websites are going away. I don't think SEO is going away. I think the balance will shift. So for the human, you're going to engage them. For the LLM, you are serving them concise, direct to the point, well-structured semantic content. For SEO and AEO, I sometimes just want the data, and sometimes I want the synthesis. The fact that AEO is probabilistic and not deterministic, that it can hallucinate, knowing that there's huge progress being made on that, every month, every quarter.
Right.
That's a thing. Sometimes I want to see it the way the brands were talking about it. So, sorry, long-winded answer. My opinion is that no, SEO will totally not become just upper funnel. In fact, as we know, it was well known for being lower funnel with great intent for a long, long time. My bet is, if you roll the clock forward in our prep, you were saying 3+ years, opinion of one, I think they come together. I love it. Just like we need software to be probabilistic and magical, like all the demos we see today, we also need it to be deterministic. I don't want my paycheck being probabilistic, right? There's a place for SaaS and deterministic things. I think the same will be true in this experience where you've got upper, middle, and lower funnel. There are times when I want it, and there are times when I want the synthesis. That's opinion of one. How does all that land for you?
Oh no,
Covered a lot of it.
I fully agree, and I think today we're in a very turbulent period where we're seeing these channels through a very myopic lens, and these are only going to evolve very very fast. And I think that even AI discovery and SEO have already merged a ton in the last 12 months. If you would have asked me this time last year if I would have thought Google would incorporate this much AI into search results, I would have told you no.
No,
And we've
yeah.
already seen that just accelerate exponentially, and I anticipate it to happen more. Talking about AI and kind of the utility of it, we see a ton of AI in helping brands and companies build content. Now, one of the interesting things is I think that content as a structure and as a form is coming through a lot of change, and it's evolving as well in this current period of time. As you think, Guy, about content, what types of content are going to be the best at performing answer results and getting into answer results? And how should we be thinking about adapting our current content? And I want to even expand this a little bit to the visual expectations on our pages. How should we be thinking about expanding our visual expectations and the content to meet these types of results from LLMs and even AI overviews that happen in Google?
Great broad question. To the first thing you said, we all have access to LLMs to create content. Mercifully, thankfully, creating a zillion pages just with LLMs is not ranking. It's not doing well. It's not showing up. 85% of the AI content on Google is human generated or human with a little bit of AI. Like the part that's pure AI or heavily AI, by that I mean LLM generated, is not doing well, which makes me as a consumer happy. I think the importance, you brought in the visuals at the end of emotionally engaging with your prospects will only increase because that more qualified traffic, the LLMs in some sense, they have a better read on what's working and what's not because they see the follow-up questions. They see, right, opinion of one, not based on data. I think we are more likely to go back to an LLM to ask follow-up than we might be in Google. May or may not be true. I don't have data for that. What I do have is the data on like, hey, people are more qualified. I also see that as we all learn to speak Google, our queries were 4 words on average. With LLMs, they're 23 words on average, and that's growing. And if OpenAI and Perplexity, as they are rumored to be doing, create browsers, then they'll have phenomenal data on what's resonating and not. And so I think although to your point, this question almost always at the moment is focused on the words, the overall experience is hugely important. Okay, on the words. I think we shift from, hey, how can I create content that will be relevant to my buyer and make sure these keywords are in it, to clearly and comprehensively answering questions asked throughout the funnel. And so I think our call recorders, like we happen to use Gong, I think we should go to Gong and say, hey, what are the questions being asked at every stage of the funnel? And let me then go answer those comprehensively. Longer, not for the sake of being longer, but longer for the sake of potentially having better, cosine similarity, better alignment with the questions being asked, and then answer a basket of questions around them. What are the clusters of things people might ask? Answer them at multiple levels, so that like topic clusters, which were baskets of keywords, now become baskets of questions. 1, 2, structure where the easiest part is the stuff you do on the page. Like you can signal to the LLM structure by using phrases like in summary, or making it easy to parse with bullets, or consider, we often put the takeaway at the end. Consider putting that up front to make it the cost for the LLM to crawl lower. 3, I think we need to personalize content even more, right? That's always fundamentally the goal of AEO, SEO, and all the stuff we're doing is to attract people's attention and get them to buy stuff or do things. Creating content by industry, by company size, by persona, by product, by use case, whatever that may be that's relevant to you, that is even more important. And localization, being able to do that at scale, is hugely valuable. I think that one of the biggest changes, and I'm curious your take on this, is the metadata. We all did a bunch of stuff for Facebook's Open Graph. I think it's hard to overemphasize how important that is for LLMs. And it turns out I know many of us know, but for those that don't, Google, Bing, Yahoo, Yandex, and others came together a few years ago to create one. They called it Schema. If you go to schema.org, you will see that. And being able to, it's got structure on like, hey, dear LLM, here's a blog page, here's a bio page, here's an event page, here's a product page, here's a case study page. And we happily make that really easy to do dynamically in our CMS. We also make it easy to auto-generate a sitemap.xml, robots.txt. We were the first to support LLMs.txt.
Awesome.
Opportunity-wise, the last thing I'll share is that there's so much opportunity here. 88% of top sites haven't implemented schema markup, ceding visibility to those that have. Yet at the same time, 73% of first page results in Google use schema, and content with structured data gets 42% more answer engine citations.
Right.
How's all that land with
Right.
you?
I mean, I think there's a real piece that you said that stands out to me, and that is the story, right? If we can't build good stories, it doesn't matter what the content has on it, right? Like, it has to have a good story. And then if you can layer in these other components of utilizing schema and data to convey that story, producing the right visuals and the right experiences around that content to enhance that story, those are the things that I think a lot of SEOs are missing the mark on. One of the most eye-opening studies that we've seen is we work with a healthcare client. Their largest source of traffic from LLMs goes to their patient stories. These are real stories about a human being that went through a very specific, health crises and how they overcame it and what happened and what their story is. Those are the ones that get them LLM traffic. It's not the silly disease page that's 70,000 words long and has way too much context, and at the end of it just tells you that you're going to die anyway. But that's where all mortality heads anyway. It's a crazy thing to look at the data and realize that these like real human narratives are the ones that get LLM traffic and not these dictionary-like pages of content. So that's what I think is really revealing about where LLMs are going and how they're taking traffic today.
To your point, I think they are absolutely valuing sort of authentic human content more. To your point about the case studies, with the discussion about traffic decreasing, Google went to defend itself. Their head of search publicly said, hey, organic clicks from Google are flat. Now, she included AI overviews in that, which in my humble opinion is legitimate. That's organic traffic. And she said, hey, there may be a mix shift towards what you just said, authentic human content where people have case studies, they have stories, they have original opinions. And so I think that's super interesting.
Let's take this into this next question, which is how do we measure success in this new world, this new era? And you mentioned Liz's article or presentation on traffic being flat. You also mentioned Bain's study that SEO traffic is down 15 to 20%. In a world where there is seemingly fewer clicks, we can debate and discuss that. How should success be measured when it comes to these new AIO or AI experiences in search and discovery?
In my humble opinion, ultimately we are driving pipeline or revenue. And so, yes, the things we were measuring on our sites, we should continue to measure, right? What's the conversion rate? What content's working, what's not? But in terms of what's happening off our site, to what we were saying earlier, keyword ranking as a concept doesn't exist. And so I think, the first place to start is thinking, what questions do I want to be part of the answer for? Just like we figured out what keywords we want to rank for, and then start measuring ad hoc sort of, am I showing up? Am I even being mentioned? And then, there are 15 plus vendors helping us measure systematically, hey, are you showing up for these? I think you move to share a voice, you versus your competitors, which I think it's sort of the logical equivalent of keyword ranking. And unlike SEO, where it's just your words, sentiment matters. How are you being brought up in this synthesized content? And the companies are, ones we know well, like SEMrush and Ahrefs, along with some new ones like Scrunch, Profound, and a bunch of others. And I think that the most sophisticated measurement then becomes guiding, just like sophisticated SEO measurement did. It points you to, hey, where should I invest, time and energy creating content, reacting to things that are happening, is where my head goes. The one last thing is, I think listening expands to places many of us may not have invested in it as much before, because the LLMs have chosen to value that content as original, authentic content and sometimes do deals with them. Reddit being the classic example, Quora, Wikipedia. If your Wikipedia page isn't up to date or accurate, that's worth spending time on now, even more than before.
Yeah.
How's that?
Let's talk about that last piece for a second, because I think brand plays a big piece in this, right? Whether it's your brand sentiment or information in like a Wikipedia or a Reddit, or even more broadly speaking, the way consumers for larger brands try to discover and get to know your brand. What types of prompts are commonly relevant to my brand? And is it that people want to understand my pricing? Is it that people want to understand the quality? Is it that people want to see reviews or context from the market? And that is all relevant to your brand. How do you think about the brand piece of measurement when it comes to the LLM exposing and sharing context about a brand?
I personally go to a place similar to sort of brand measurement in general, in that I'm like, did my messages get pulled through? Right? We spent all this time, as we were talking about earlier, carefully crafting these stories and these points that do not cover our entire product on purpose, because we're focused on engaging differentiators. Did that get pulled through? Or am I just a list of features to the LLM? One, and two, when it does talk about me broadly, our brand, is it positive? Is it neutral? Is it negative? Is it saying I'm a good one at whatever category I'm in? I'm a bad one? Is where my head goes. And I think, some of these tools that we were talking about earlier are good at doing that. They are helpful at doing that.
Right. And it's a starting place, right? At least to understand what the sentiment or direction is on your brand, and how eventually you can change it or craft that new narrative about the brand.
It's interesting to hear you say eventually, because, and I wonder if you've seen the same thing. I feel like different than SEO, where you had to build authority measured in links and other things. Here, because the LLMs currently are basically crawling every inference time, every time a question is asked, you can change content on your site and it can show up in the LLM like this afternoon, tomorrow.
That's right.
The flip side of that coin is, to the discussion we had about Wikipedia, if you've got out-of-date content, which I know none of your listeners have on their site, this is only for
right.
other people out
Everything's
there.
up to date.
Or if someone else has out-of-date content on your site, that could be cited for a really long time.
Very long time. And I think that ultimately the piece of the puzzle that we don't have a lot of context on is, when you think about authority and you think about your own brand's authority, how much of that is crafted by your own owned assets versus the earned components. And those are the things that we still don't really understand yet. If you look at all the mentions and all of the citations that are being utilized to craft a story about our personal brands, our company brands, that really becomes the new recipe for unlocking how an LLM can craft the response about your brand.
And to your point, not only do we not know it, it is changing rapidly. As we're both talking about how dynamic this space is at the moment. I think that like the highest level of maturity today is about bobbing and weaving as things are changing, because it's like there's a reason it makes the news when Google changes their algorithm, because it's such a mature space, and that happens several times a year, not several times a week. Roll back the clock 15 years to the beginning of search, happened all the time.
Exactly.
Which you and I both remember.
Yep. So let's talk about technical foundations. Yeah. I mean, you brought this up earlier. We talked about schema. We talked about like structured data on pages. But really, I think technical optimization is going through a set of changes as much as the content components that we talked about before. when you think about answer engines and a website's readiness, whether it's what you guys are doing at Webflow, whether it's just generally how websites are creating integrity behind their tech, what are some of the foundational optimization or efforts that webmasters, web designers, web developers, and SEOs should take into consideration to have a strong technical foundation?
Some of the things that come to mind, well, a couple of thoughts, and I'm curious where your head goes. Like, there are some that will say, here are 500 things you should go do for technical SEO. In my humble opinion, it tends to be a much, 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 much smaller number that matter. And my hunch is that the same will be true here. I think some of the fundamentals also remain true. You signal quality by having a super fast site globally, right? We happen to have 250 plus data centers around the world. You need a secure site. Secure sites that auto update patches and make infrastructure improvements without me, the webmaster, needing to manually update a bunch of plugins. Like, that signals quality. Okay. In addition, we have plenty of work to do on basic stuff. I mean, 25% of the top ranking pages are missing meta descriptions. Like, how is that possible in this day and age? We were talking earlier about the metadata. If you can dynamically generate schema, which is easy to do, for example, on Webflow or sitemap.xml or robots.txt, that's really, really valuable. LLMs.txt, I don't see any evidence today. I'm curious if you do that the LLMs are using it. So I wouldn't put it top of your list, but I would put it somewhere on the list, because it seems illogical that they never would. You, of course, need a site that is mobile responsive by default, which is not new news. And you want excellent lighthouse scores. Someone poked me back the other day saying, hey, I don't see any evidence that the LLMs value speed of website. That may very well be true. I can't imagine that it would stay true. I can't imagine that that will continue to be the case, even if the interface to the LLMs does not care about latency as much. I have no evidence one way or the other. The humans enjoy responsive, fast sites, and that inevitably will be part of the equation as they leave the LLMs. And do they bounce right back or not? Right. What are you seeing? If you were to guide people on a few things, where would you point them?
One of the things that we're becoming very prescriptive in the technical conversation is understanding your core audience and what their needs are. And I think that's one of the things that tech has never taken into account. And I think, candidly, and it's not to bash Google, but I think Google has created a very, very huge disservice to much of the web community in basically making really broad blank statements. You have to have a mobily responsive site, right? And that is definitely true, but there are certainly some industries where mobile responsiveness is really, really, really important, and there's other industries where it just doesn't matter. If I'm in the news business, you got to have a very mobile responsive site because people consume lots of news and information on their mobile devices. If I sell, giant contracts for, construction equipment, probably not the most important thing for me to be super mobile responsive. Do I have to have a mobile friendly website? Probably, yes. But I doubt someone is buying a, 400-foot boom, crane from my mobile device, right? They're probably going to do that from a computer, and there's probably a lengthy process in evaluating that purchase decision. So I think that we don't really spend enough time talking about our technical capabilities and the audience's expectations around that. Even speed is a highly, debatable set of layers. And to your point, like having global footprint and speed is very important for some types of sites. But then there's others where it isn't the main root purpose or intent of it. Does it have to be like within striking distance of like responsiveness? Yes. But not like some like lightning fast, like, world-class speed site. And I think these are the things that we miss as web developers, and we miss that context. And I don't think that Google and much of the community does enough to talk about context setting when it comes to technical investments. Same goes for some of these like opportunistic investments like schema and other ways of sharing data. What really matters to the audience is the best starting place in my opinion.
That I think is super insightful, and full stop. And I recognize and appreciate that at least it seems like those broad statements are backed up by the data that they are valuing mobile responsiveness, super fast sites for everyone. Even if,
Yes.
to your point, I'm buying $1 million 400-foot boom crane that I'm not going to buy on my mobile phone
Right. Exactly.
or
All
multi-million. I
right.
don't know.
Speaking of planning, let's talk quickly about planning and how we start to build our plans for this AI discovery world. So, if we're building a 30-day plan and we're a business that needs practical steps to organize and level up our AEO or AI results game plan, what are the 3 practical steps we should take?
If I were to boil it down to 3, I would humbly suggest 1, go experiment with answering some high website visit intent questions. So go listen to your sales call recordings if you have a sales team. Go read support emails or sales emails. Pick a handful. And by high website visit intent, I mean things that an LLM can't summarize. For Webflow, that's often show me example websites. It might be the human case studies you were talking about in the medical example earlier. 2, I'd go try out schema on a few key pages and see what impact it has. Google mentioned that Rotten Tomatoes put structured data on, forgive me, I have the numbers elsewhere. It's some 100,000 or 250,000 pages, and they got a huge number more. I want to say it was 25% more organic traffic because they were implying because of that. And 3, I'd go renew a bit of the effort on go ask ChatGPT or Gemini or Anthropic, your favorite. Tell me about my company. See who's cited, and then go look and see. Hey, is the content there accurate? Are they talking about us in the right way? If not, consider literally it's human to human going to reach out to them. And I'll add a corollary as a 4th. We built a rubric of how to optimize for AEO. You said, hey, here's a framework to logically put it all together around content, technical, authority, and measurement. Made up 5 levels around them. If you go to webflow.com/resources/AEO, that is there. It's not a pitch. It's genuinely like intended to be value add. And you can put in your domain, and we have a ginormous prompt we wrote to LLM that will go look at your site, go look at a bunch of other places, and give you an assessment, give you a point of view on here's what we see, here's what seems to be missing. And if you're only going to do 2 things, here are the things we suggest you do, and here's a longer list, hopefully to help activate exactly the question you're asking for each site individually.
I love that. I love I love the fact that you're using AI to speed up the process of learning. That's great. B, your last point there around how to understand your brand and what your own brand is being, how it's being depicted in these LLM responses is such an undervalued exercise. And I think in that first 30 days, if an LLM can't get your brand messaging right, if it can't communicate what you do as a product or as a service, as a company, if it can't explain how your pricing is set up, then you're gonna go. It's gonna take you a while to really get traction, right? Because that should be the basics of getting the LLMs to respond accurately about who and what you guys do. And so I think that's one of the interesting things in that the first 30 days is getting that comprehension is so critical. So, Guy, I want to transition to our lightning round.
Let's do it.
We've got 5 questions. This should be fun. Hopefully we're diving into each of these a minute or 2, maybe more, depending on how exciting and fascinating we go. But let's dive into our lightning round. The first question: buy or sell? Will LLM-based discovery replace traditional search results within the next 12 months?
I would say no in the 12-month time frame. But to our discussion earlier, I think both are going to remain. They each serve a purpose. SEO is dead. I don't believe it's dead. I don't believe it will be. And to our earlier discussion, my personal guess, they somehow merge over time because you need both probabilistic and deterministic answers. And I thought your point about how quickly Google has integrated AI into the search experience is the archetypal example of that right now.
Yeah. Yeah, no question. And I think, Google still has this huge, control over data and how consumers look for information that not even, OpenAI has yet. And so that's a huge advantage in their ability to craft an experience that's relevant to consumers and to users online.
To your point, if you believe that broadly, at the broadest strokes, the LLMs are similar to each other, then brand name matters a ton. OpenAI is, one could argue, well ahead of the others, except Google, in that brand recognition, and that will matter over time to who goes to which LLM to ask questions. And Google's got the huge advantage there, in addition to the technical, like they should have the best crawl of the web in the world.
Yes. I mean, and to your point, I think one of the most unique things that's happened in the last 3 to 4 months, and I think as we get into the turn of this new year, is the expanded utility of Gemini. I mean, Google's made it very clear that they're going to make Gemini this core functioning AI tool that exists in your Gmail, exists in your, I think very soon in your local search experience. It's going to be this little partner that wanders around. I hate to bring up a Microsoft product in this conversation, but it will become the Clippy of just the way you search online. And I don't think that it's too far fetched to think that Gemini is behind the curve to OpenAI. I actually think they've made a lot of great advancements in the way that their models work and the way that they deliver results to actually create pretty good parity with what OpenAI has created.
To your point, I think we may see, we've seen multi-$100 million bloody battles in various B2B SaaS spaces. This could be a multi-trillion-dollar battle between OpenAI and Google, where both are painting this picture of the future where, and I'm going to mix words they've each said, infinite context window that has access to your entire life becomes as personalized as can be, proactively helpful in doing things around your life. And, that would have OpenAI maybe getting into productivity things. That has Google connecting all the data it has about you. That has both of them taking action on your behalf.
Yeah.
That could be quite shaping to our experiences as humans.
That's right. No question. I think that's a direction that Google, desperately wants to win the race at, because I think the foundational basic LLM capabilities is just what we've been seeing for the past year. But that true agent that true assistant, is still yet, I think, to have won the market. And so we're still pioneering in that zone. Next lightning round question: trend or trash? Will optimizing for simple elements, a summary, an FAQ, pay off in traffic over the long run over creating long-form content like listicles or blog posts? Is this a trend or trash?
I think we need both in that. So I would say trash. I think LLMs are valuing structured content. Yes, you lower their crawl budget by giving them some conclusion earlier on. You also lower their crawl budget by giving them a listicle. I've seen people experimenting with, I write my blog post as I would normally, but then I'm going to put the entire same set of content in FAQs at the bottom of that, appended, so that I can make it easier for an LLM to crawl the site itself. You also see some trend towards longer rather than shorter, but longer not for the sake of being longer for more likely having the answer the LLM is looking for. So at least from what I see, it is not clear which way that is going to go, which way will be cheapest for the LLMs to crawl. Even if they have infinite context windows, I think they will still, at some point, make the economic decision to differentially crawl things that are easier for them. What do you think, Jordan? Are you seeing the long or short do better? What would your answer to that question be?
I think there's a lot of hype in the industry today around these summaries, these FAQs. There's just so much talk about, this is what worked. If I just put a list at the top of my page, suddenly the LLM just loved it, and it didn't love it before. But to your point, I do fundamentally think that audiences need context, and context typically comes in these longer form pieces of content or experiences or pages. I ultimately think that it is going to be both, but brands need to understand where they have strength or weaknesses around their content experience, and we don't evaluate content experiences by a expectation of a user. We evaluate content experiences by the page and template we have. And I think that's the biggest falsehood that many of us in the content marketing space have just kind of overly become reliant on. Well, that's just what the template is, and the template just has that. And so, but that's not necessarily what users, or in this particular case, based off of users, what LLMs are looking for.
I so deeply appreciate that several times in this conversation, you've been like, what does the human on the other end actually need? What's actually valuable? Because that's ultimately true north. All the rest of this are mechanics to get there, but
Yes.
that
Yes.
is true north, full stop. Separately, going into speculation land, I do wonder whether, for sure, not speculating, right? Websites
Mm-hmm.
have to serve these two audiences, the humans and the LLMs. Okay.
Right.
Speculating, I do wonder whether there's a world where you serve the humans these, visually stunning, emotionally engaging experiences, fine. And for the LLMs, LLMs.txt points to a markdown version of every page that you have just sitting there in parallel, right? Riding sidecar that summarizes it, or maybe it's all the content, but it makes it easier for them to parse. So instead of the video, you've got the transcript, right? Instead of the
Yep.
image, you've got the text that's in it, or a description, the accessibility alt text, perhaps. I do wonder whether that is a path we will go in the future or not.
There's very likely a parallel path in some of that. I think that the more LLMs can be vocal, well, the more these AI models can be vocal about the needs that they have, the more capable the web community, Webflow included, is going to be at addressing those basic needs, whether it be data, whether it be information, whether it be context on pages. Today, there's very little direction, right? We're still beholden to many of the traditional SEO guidelines, and I think that that's something that really needs to change, which is a really great segue to our next crystal ball question, which is, how will organic strategies evolve over the next 18 months?
My take, it will rapidly evolve like the early days of paid search, but the core goal is the same. Tell valuable stories to build brand and drive revenue. I think one thing we didn't talk about earlier is freshness will continue to matter. I think 85% of the citations in OpenAI were updated in the last 10 months. We ourselves, Vivian on our team, partnered with AirOps to 5x the speed of refreshing content. We saw 42% lift in traffic, and I want to say it was 4x higher conversion. I may have that number, but like materially higher conversion. And I think full stop. And I think we will also collectively focus on the accuracy of content on and off site more than we did before. But fundamentally, the goals are the same.
Yeah, that was a spot on point around the entire freshness of our content and our websites, and that is, I think, one of the biggest critical needs in our strategy and in the way we think about planning, is like, what is the freshness expectation, and how am I addressing my audience in the right intervals? And I think we often get it wrong because we think about programmatic and we think about just building more, but building more doesn't necessarily solve the freshness question, right? It's about building at the right frequency for the right audience with the right context, and putting all those things together is much more challenging than I think we all think it is.
And to your very initial point, that's what good SEO was always supposed to be. And to your point, we've been rewarded for other things too, but like the core thing isn't different. No, they are not identical, AEO and SEO, but the core motivation is similar, quite similar, heavy overlap.
Yes. All right. Next lightning round question. What's the word? What is one word that sums up the current understanding of LLM discovery within enterprises?
Early. I invite everyone to experiment, to learn. Anyone who tells you you said it earlier, something like this, anyone who tells you they have it completely figured out is lying. No one does, not even the LLMs themselves. And so there is, should it be strategically important for your business? There's absolutely advantage to be gained by leaning in to our discussion earlier about 88% of sites, top sites, not having schema on them. You're not behind. Everyone is learning. Or if you are behind, you're not that far behind. And there's real opportunity here.
Yeah, I think it's really well said. That is a core reality that we all have to come to, especially us knowledge workers and in the tech space, is like, we're not behind. We're all figuring it out, like big and small. And I think enterprises right now, there's a huge appetite to just have it right, but there is no perfect plan yet for LLM discovery.
To your point, I think the one mistake potentially to avoid is, if it's strategically important to your business, have that huge appetite. This is a major strategic initiative, not a little side project. And I don't know that it requires radically different resourcing, but it should be a real thing on people's radars. Would you agree with that?
100% agree with that. And putting the right teams, putting the right talent behind solving these problems is absolutely critical for any enterprise. And I think that's where a lot of them get it wrong. Is, you just put two people, or you hire a big consulting firm. Not that there's anything wrong with consulting firms, but that's not the only solution. You have to really integrate your use of AI across the organization. Our last lightning round question here: game plan. As a web developer, how do you maintain visual integrity in an answer-driven world?
I think being able to embody your brand guidelines in some sort of structure and having that consistently applied everywhere on your site will help the humans, and it will help the machines. We happen to have this concept of a style guide inside Webflow that makes that easy to do. But I think it helps both audiences internalize your content, feel brand consistency more easily. By the way, it also helps the demand gen team and all the associated teams, who most often are like, I just want to go run quickly and try the new thing to gain advantage. If it's not quite on brand, so be it. It helps them stay on brand automatically, because that's the playground they're playing in.
That's right. Absolutely. Before we close out this episode, Guy, I do want to ask, in our prep session and even just in our conversation today, you shared some AEO resources that you and your team are publishing on Webflow. Give our listeners a little bit more context as to why this is valuable, how they can use it, where they can find it. I really think that as you mentioned in just your last question about game planning, there's so much we're all learning. We're all trying to innovate in this space, and we're all chasing after knowledge and information. And you and your team have built some things that I think are really helpful in this conversation.
We're investing, Jordan, to your point, because this AEO affects both parts of our jobs: building brand and driving demand. It's both threat and opportunity, because there is so much to be done and learn. And so, should you want a framework with which to think about your maturity, to have discussions internally, rather than, as you said earlier, sort of the pundit here or there with the hot take LinkedIn posts, please go to webflow.com/resources/AEO. And in addition, if you want there, put in your domain name. A few minutes later, you'll have in your email an assessment of what we see on your site, off your site, to help you simply advance. Separately from that, Webflow can help you on all four of these categories: content, technical authority, and measurement. And we'd be delighted to talk about that. But this research, it's purely because we think everyone collectively raising their understanding of and learning more rapidly together about AEO, that's in everybody's self-interest together.
Absolutely. And that's a great place for us to wrap up this episode of the Voices of Search podcast. Huge thank you to Guy from Webflow for joining us. If you'd like to contact Guy, you can find a link to his LinkedIn profile in our show notes or at thevoicesofsearch.com. For more information about Webflow, visit webflow.com. If you haven't subscribed yet and want a daily stream of SEO and content marketing knowledge in your podcast feed, hit the subscribe button in your podcast app or on YouTube, and we'll be back in your feed soon. Okay, that's all for today. But until next time, remember, the answers are always in the data.